Gabriel's routine was measured by mouse clicks and the static hum of the baby monitor. Since his wife passed away a year ago, the silence of the house at night had become a living character, a dense presence he tried to fill with the bluish glow of his laptop and piles of financial reports. His daughter, Alice, only 2 years old, was his entire world. The video monitor on the coffee table was his anchor. He glanced at that small, grainy LCD screen every 5 minutes, watching the girl's chest rise and fall under her blanket of clouds. On that Tuesday, the fog outside seemed to muffle even the sounds of the street. Gabriel was typing frantically when the monitor's audio gave a sharp crackle. It wasn't the sound of Alice moving. It was a laugh, a crystalline, childish laugh, but filled with a euphoria that didn't match the deep sleep shown on the screen. "No, now it's my turn to hide," Alice's voice echoed through the plastic speaker. Gabriel froze. His eyes shot to the screen. Alice was in a fetal position, fists clenched near her face, her blonde hair spread across the pillow. She hadn't moved a muscle. The cognitive dissonance hit Gabriel like a punch. The sound and the image had detached from reality. While the Alice on the screen slept, the Alice on the audio let out little shrieks of joy. He heard the unmistakable sound of bare feet hitting the hardwood floor of the room. Tap, 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 tap. And then the long, heavy creak of the oak wardrobe door swinging open. Cold sweat ran down Gabriel's neck. He couldn't look away from the screen. The room in the video was empty of movement. The wardrobe door appeared closed in the image, but the sound coming from the device was of something physical, heavy, crawling into the wood. When he ran upstairs and threw open the bedroom door, the silence he found was deafening. Alice woke up startled, crying. The wardrobe was locked, but as he picked up the monitor he had brought with him, the metallic whisper, "Found you," turned the room into a cage of pure fear. The hours that followed were a blur of paranoia. Gabriel took Alice to his own bed, locking the master bedroom door. He tried to convince himself that the device was picking up a neighbor's frequency, but there were no neighbors with children on that dead-end street. To make matters worse, he couldn't turn the monitor off. Even after removing the batteries and disconnecting the power cable, the LCD screen remained lit, emitting a dead, grayish glow. He sat on the floor, back against the door, clutching his knees, while Alice slept heavily beside him. The monitor, tossed on the rug, began to show images that were not from her room. The night vision camera now displayed the hallway of the house, but from an impossible perspective, as if it were installed on the ceiling, exactly above where he was sitting. On the screen, Gabriel saw himself from above. He saw the top of his own head. And then he saw the bedroom door slowly open in the monitor's image, even though in the physical reality in front of him, the door remained locked. Through the screen, a figure began to emerge from the dark hallway. It was a distorted version of his late wife, but her movements were spasmodic, like a film with missing frames. She carried something in her hands, a pair of sewing scissors. On the monitor, the figure leaned over the virtual Gabriel and began to whisper into his ear. In real life, Gabriel felt the air turn freezing behind his neck. The smell of dried flowers and mold filled the room. He didn't want to look back. He stared at the screen, watching the figure raise the scissors above his head, while the monitor's audio captured the sound of metal scraping against metal. In a surge of adrenaline, Gabriel grabbed Alice and ran downstairs, determined to get out of that house. The living room lights flickered. He tried to open the front door, but the handle was red hot, burning his palm. He recoiled, tripping over the laptop that was still on. The baby monitor, which he had left upstairs, now appeared on his computer screen. The signal had invaded his Wi-Fi, his TV, every electronic device in the house. Voices began to multiply. It was no longer just Alice's laughter or his wife's whisper. There were dozens of children's voices, all playing the same game of hide and seek. "Behind the curtain," one said. "Under the table," said another. Alice, in his arms, stopped crying. She looked at the dark corner of the kitchen and pointed with a tiny finger. "Daddy, the man with no face wants to play too. He says you are the it." Gabriel looked at the TV. The image now showed the basement of the house, a place he hadn't visited in months. In the center of the basement, sitting in a rocking chair, was the baby monitor itself, pointed at a brick wall. On the wall, written in what looked like soot, was Gabriel's name repeated hundreds of times. The audio suddenly shifted to a sound of heavy, wet breathing coming from every corner of the room. The walls began to emit the hum of static, and the wallpaper seemed to vibrate with the frequency of the sound. He realized that the house was no longer a building of bricks, but an extension of that hellish device. They weren't being watched. They were being processed by something that fed on sound waves and fear. The peak of the terror came when the sound of heavy footsteps began to descend from the ceiling. Something was walking upside down above them. Gabriel ran to the laundry room, the only room without windows or electronics. But the baby monitor was there, hanging by its cord from the ceiling like a noose. The screen was now white, emitting a blinding light. The voice that came out of it was no longer human. It was a metallic amalgam of all the voices he loved. "Gabriel," the monitor said, the voice vibrating in his bones. "The signal never dies. It only changes hosts." In a reflexive move, Gabriel tried to smash the device against the wall, but the plastic was indestructible. Suddenly, Alice pulled away from his arms. She walked toward the white light of the monitor with glazed eyes. Before he could reach her, the girl touched the LCD screen. Her body shivered, and in a millisecond, Alice vanished. Silence returned. An absolute freezing silence. Gabriel fell to his knees, screaming his daughter's name, pounding the floor until his hands bled. Then, the baby monitor emitted a small, low battery beep. The screen lit up one last time. In it, he saw Alice's room. The girl was there, sitting in the middle of the crib, but the image was grainy, as if she were part of an old recording. She looked at the camera and waved. Beside her, the wardrobe door opened, and a long, pale hand rested on her shoulder. The final audio, before the device went dark forever, was Alice's voice, coming from somewhere beyond technology. "Daddy, you didn't find me. Now you stay in the dark." Gabriel looked around. The laundry room door was gone. There were no windows, no exit, Only total darkness and the eternal sound of static beginning to hiss inside his own head.